Have you ever just wanted to run your code without having to deal with servers and patching and all that maintenance? Well, if that's you, you've come to the right place. Today, we're taking our very first serverless flight using AWS Lambda. We're going to go from absolutely nothing to a running function in the cloud. So buckle up, let's get into it.
It kind of sounds like a riddle, right? How do you run code without a server? And that's the big question that serverless computing answers. See, the trick is, the servers don't actually disappear. They're just no longer your problem to manage.
So here's our flight plan. First, we'll cover the big idea, code without servers. Then we'll run through our pre-flight security checklist. After that, the fun part, building the function and understanding its controls. Then we'll launch it, see it work, and finally, we'll talk about cleanup and where you can go from here.
Okay, so our mission, if you choose to accept it, is to run our code without ever having to think about a server. The whole point is to just focus on writing the application and let the cloud handle all that complicated infrastructure stuff. That really is the core promise of serverless.
And here's the crucial part. With serverless, AWS is doing all the heavy lifting of managing servers for you. You just upload your code, and AWS figures out what resources it needs to run. And maybe the best part? You only pay for the exact compute time you actually use. It's a total game changer.
All right, before any plane can take off, the pilot has to run through a pre-flight checklist. For us, that means getting our AWS environment set up securely. And trust me, this part is super important for a safe trip.
First things first, you'll need an AWS account. The second you have it, your number one priority is to secure the root user. Think of it as the master key to your entire account with multi-factor authentication, or MFA. After that's locked down, we'll use a service called IAM Identity Center to create a separate admin user. That way, we're not using that all-powerful root user for our day-to-day work.
And this quote right here really nails it. Imagine the root user is the master key to a giant apartment building. You wouldn't use it to open your own apartment door every day, right? You'd keep it in a safe for emergencies. That's exactly what we're doing here. Our new admin user is our everyday key. It's just a fundamental security practice in AWS.
With our security checks done, we are officially cleared for takeoff. Let's get to the good stuff, building our very first Lambda function. And we're going to do it right from scratch in the AWS console.
The process is actually pretty simple. In the Lambda console, you'll just click Create Function, then pick Author from scratch. We'll give it a name, let's say My Lambda Function. For the runtime, we'll pick Python 3.13. Leave the architecture as the default, and then just hit Create Function. And boom! Just like that, the basic shell of our function is ready to go.
Now, something really cool just happened behind the scenes. For our function to do literally anything, it needs permissions. And AWS is smart enough to create a basic set of permissions for us automatically. It's called an execution role. By default, this role gives our function just enough power to write logs to a service called Amazon CloudWatch, which, as you'll see, is absolutely essential.
Okay, so our function exists, but what's the code inside actually doing? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the three main controls for any Lambda function: the handler, the event, and the context.
First up, we've got the handler. You can think of this as the main doorway into your code. When Lambda gets triggered, it looks for this one specific function. In our Python code, it's called Lambda handler, and that's where everything starts. So, how do we get data into our function? That's where the event object comes in. It's basically a chunk of JSON data that gets passed in as the very first argument to our handler. It contains everything our code needs to do its job. The second argument is something called the context object. Lambda just hands this to us for free, and it's packed with useful info about the current situation. Things like the function's name, its memory limits, and even the name of the log group where our logs are being sent, which our code actually uses.
All right, enough theory. It's time for the payoff. Let's launch this thing. We're going to invoke our function with some sample data and see what happens. This is the fun part.
Now to test it, we'll set up a little test event. Remember that event object we just talked about? This is it. We're just sending a simple piece of JSON with two keys, length and width, and we'll give them the values 6 and 7. Our code is set up to just multiply these two numbers together.
And there it is. The function runs, it multiplies 6 by 7, and it returns the answer 42. Success! Our function took the input, did its calculation, and gave us the right output. It worked!
But hey, that final number isn't the whole story. If you look at the code, you'll see it also has some print and logger lines.
That text doesn't go back to the caller. Instead, it gets sent directly to Amazon CloudWatch logs. And this is the key to everything. It's how you'll debug your code and see what your function is doing step by step. We did it! We had a successful flight. Now, just like any good pilot, it's time to do our post-flight checks and clean everything up, making sure we don't leave any resources running that we don't need anymore.
Cleanup is just a quick 3-step process. First, delete the Lambda function itself. Second, delete the CloudWatch log group that it created. And third, delete that IAM execution role that was made for us. Doing this keeps your AWS account nice and tidy and helps make sure you don't get any surprise bills.
So what's next? I mean, this first flight is really just the beginning. From here, you could learn to deploy more complex functions using zip files, or you could set up a trigger so your function runs automatically whenever a file gets uploaded to a storage bucket. You could even build a whole API or connect your function to a database. The possibilities are massive.
And just like that, your first serverless flight is complete. You've gone from just an idea to deploying and testing a real function in the cloud. You've now got the foundation to start building some really powerful stuff. So the only question left is, what are you going to build next?